En dan is het nu tijd voor de tweede medaille. Dit wordt dan de Award for the Freedom of Worship, de vrijheid van godsdienst. En de presenter, degene die hem uitreikt, dat zal James Roosevelt Jr. zijn. En dat is een kleinzoon van de president. Hij gaat ons vertellen waarom die gegeven gaat worden, deze medaille, aan Prins Al-Hassan bin Talal van Jordanië. Prins Al-Hassan is een broer van de inmiddels overleden koning Hoessein van Jordanië en dus een oom van de huidige vorst. Hij is oprichter en betrokken bij veel organisaties in zijn land en daarbuiten op het gebied van wetenschap en religie. En opvallend daarbij zijn zijn vele initiatieven tot een open dialoog en ook een vreedzame coexistenties met andere religies dan de islam waartoe hij zelf behoort, zoals het christendom en het jodendom.
Of every person to worship God in his own way everywhere in the world. On this, the 24th day of May 2014, the Franklin D. Roosevelt Freedom of Worship Medal is awarded to His Royal Highness Prince Al-Hassan bin Talal of the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan. In an age increasingly torn by ethnic, religious, and political strife, yours has been a voice of reason and tolerance, a voice of peace, a voice of understanding. Born in your beloved Amman, the youngest son of His Majesty King Talal I, you have spent a lifetime serving the Jordanian people as Crown Prince, brother and stalwart advisor to the late King Hussein, and as uncle and valued senior counselor to King Abdullah II. Educated in Jordan and England, and holding a bachelor's and a master's degree in Oriental Studies from Oxford University, you would go on to establish a number of critically important Jordanian institutions, including the Royal Scientific Society in 1970, the Arab Thought Forum in 1981, and the Higher Council for Science and Technology in 1987. Your passionate interest in young people led you to establish the Arab Youth Forum in 1982, and you have been deeply involved in Jordan's economic and educational development throughout a host of activities and organizations. You have also been an active player on the world stage. In 1981, while addressing the 36th session of the United Nations, you suggested the establishment of a new international humanitarian order, which led the Secretary General to ask you to found and co-chair the Independent Commission on International Humanitarian Issues. In 2002, you co-founded the International Cultures Foundation, leading to the creation of the Parliament of Cultures in 2004. And you have served on a number of UNESCO commissions and committees, all dedicated to improving the lives of ordinary people the world over. The author of 9 books and an astute observer of both East and West, your recent reflections on the impact of the rise of global inequality have served to remind us that if we want to understand Occupy Wall Street or the Arab Spring, we must acknowledge that the human dignity deficit is more important than the budget deficit. But it is concerning the religious and cultural divide between Muslims, Christians, Jews, and the many other faiths that make up our diverse and too often troubled world, where you have perhaps left your greatest mark. Here, your efforts to foster an ongoing, systematic interfaith dialogue stand as a shining example of how the noble art of conversation can build bridges between peoples. In 1994, this belief manifested itself in your founding the Royal Institute for Interfaith Studies, a non-governmental organization based in Amman that seeks to eliminate misconceptions by finding the common human and ethical values that strengthen interfaith relations. You are also a charter member of the Foundation for Interreligious and Intercultural Research and Dialogue. Centered at the University of Geneva, the FIIRD seeks to advance a greater understanding of Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, out of the belief that cooperation among these three faiths represents perhaps the greatest chance for the achievement of world peace. Between 1999 and 2006, you served as moderator for the Seventh World Assembly of the World Conference on Religion and Peace, and continue to serve as this body's chair emeritus. In 2003, you launched the Partners in Humanity initiative to enhance understanding between the Muslim and Western world in the wake of the 9/11 attacks. And in 2009, you established the West Asia-North Africa Forum to bring together decision makers, civil society organizations, religious leaders, and others to promote social cohesion and consensus in this vital region. Throughout all of these efforts, you have remained steadfast to your belief that we must enter into a dialogue between ourselves and others, for we have to comprehend before we move to understanding. You have also said that the road to understanding is sometimes long and difficult, but we should not let this discourage us, for alongside the Silk Route and the Spice Route and the Oil Route lies the road of ideas, a road you have been urging us to travel for more than 4 decades. The Holy Quran says, "No one of you is a believer until he desires for his brother that which he desires for himself." Your dedication to religious tolerance and the fundamental right of each person to worship God in his own way has helped advance FDR's 4 freedoms. And for this we thank you, and it is my privilege to be a part of honoring you here today.
Prins Al-Hassan heeft al zeer veel internationale onderscheidingen gekregen trouwens. Waaronder bijvoorbeeld het Grootkruis in de Orde van Oranje-Nassau. En dat is de allerhoogste rang in die orde. En ook voor zijn werk voor het Internationale Rode Kruis is hij al een paar keren geëerd. In zijn geval trouwens voor zijn werk voor de Rode Halve Maan natuurlijk. En het Rode Kruis, dat komt later vandaag in deze plechtigheid nog een keer terug. We gaan nu luisteren naar Prins Al-Hassan.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. After such a presentation, there's really not much for me to say. I hope you are not a credulous audience, because James was too generous, really, with his remarks. I thank you again. Your Majesty, when your mother, then Crown Princess Beatrix, came to Jordan a few years ago with your late father, Prince Klaus, she brought with her not a Philips radio, but a gift of the copper plate with narrative of the journeys of the famed Dutch historian and traveler Snoek Bourgogne. Copper plate which included images of Mecca and even of my late grandfather, King Abdullah, aged 6. It was a very moving testimony to the fact that affinity between peoples is essential to inner peace. We speak of peace, inner peace, peace with our neighbors, but I think the most important freedom that Franklin Delano Roosevelt did not mention is freedom from responsibility. The most terrifying freedom is freedom from responsibility. When the great Republic of Athens sought not a better life, but freedom from responsibility, Alexander Gibbon reminds us, Athens ceased to be free. So it is with an enormous sense of responsibility that someone like me, trying to think out of the box, Prime Minister, if I may, looks at my sisters, if I'm allowed to look at my sisters, to my right and my left, looks at what they represent, and is reminded instantly of the fact that humankind, man and womanhood, live in one planet. We have no other Earth to go to. So, when Aung San Suu Kyi, my colleague at Oxford University, is freed from house arrest, a call that many of us made in letters, free Aung San Suu Kyi, and we asked the question, is it possible for something to be done about the Rohingya Muslims in Myanmar? We are told this is an internal Myanmar issue. When we look at the question today of an ugly man carrying the Holy Book of Islam, representing an organization called Books Are Taboo, Boko Haram. How dare he, carrying the Holy Book of Islam, be allowed over television stations and news wires, claim that he has the right in the name of Islam to enslave young girls to prevent them from learning. The faith that started with one word, read, is being contravened by outlaws. In the world of news, who is given the greater responsibility? He who portrays the realities on the ground as are being portrayed by my sisters at this gathering. As we heard in Afghanistan, the creation of a radio station is so important. But who internationally is going to listen to that radio station and to the realities of the authentic story at the grassroots? In Somalia, who really cares about the humanity of Somalia? And as for Pakistan, my Susral, as we would say in Urdu, the land of my in-laws, I ask, who is aware of the fact that Pakistan is the largest host country to refugees in the world? Pope Francis is visiting the Holy Land almost as we speak. In that Holy Land, Jews, Christians, and Muslims have shared heritage for millennia, some good, some not so good. But essentially, the teachings of our faiths have nothing to do with the aberrations of human beings. If you consider 2014, we are 100 years from 1914. What have we learned from 1914 to 2014? Two huge civil wars in Europe, referred to as world wars, wreaked their consequences on the peoples of the world. And I think that it is time to bear in mind that until human dignity is at the center of the construct of an architecture for a new world, it is impossible to talk of the stabilization of populations on our planet. As I said yesterday, quoting my friend Henry Kissinger, whom I saw only a few days ago, globalization, yes, but there must be equity or some degree of equity between cultures. Is it the right of the rogue radio station or the rogue media to select the caricature of the Prophet and then to stand back as people kill each other from Nigeria to Bangladesh? Is it the right of this scoundrel, this monster, to hold the holy book and to terrorize innocent children of God, so that the image, which people like myself are trying to reflect, of our genuine fear of al-tughati wal-ghuzati wal-ghula, of the tyrants, of the invaders, and of the extremists, is understood. I said yesterday at dinner, Afghanistan cost $17 trillion. What have we achieved? Extremism has moved to other parts of the world, to our world. So I would like to go back to faith and say in the words of the Holy Quran, we, therefore, should vie with one another in good works. The road is long, afford, nor would we permit ourselves to be pessimistic. Where there is faith, there is hope. And I would like to think of a patrimony for all humanity, none better than Jerusalem, which could and indeed must become a center, not for monologue about the need for dialogue, but for conversation in a civilized framework for disagreement. I believe in the noble art of conversation, and someone once told me, well, in my country it is a military art, a martial art. When will we revisit our text, heritage, and history, and when will our neighbor revisit his or her text, heritage, or history, so we can speak of developing a shared ethic of human solidarity? A humanitarian vision at the center of our drive to keep alive the traditions of the Enlightenment. The Enlightenment is not about science and technology alone. It is about ethics, values. You speak of Islam and the West. Islam is heterogeneous. The West is heterogeneous. We are not monoliths. And I think it's important to bear in mind that the illumination came from the East, where the sun rises. The illumination of millennia, Confucian, Buddhist, Jain, Sikh, and so many others, came from the East, the wisdom of the ancients. Is it not time today to consider that from the East came wisdom and compassion? I pay tribute to my late mother-in-law, Begum Shaista Ikramullah. There are no mother-in-law jokes in my family. When she declared, working with Eleanor Roosevelt, a lady who was the first PhD in education from London University in 1938, worked with Eleanor Roosevelt, and I cite, "It is imperative that there be an accepted code of civilized behavior." And later she said, "The ideas emphasized in the declaration are far from being realized, but there is a good to which those who believe in the freedom of the human spirit can try to reach." Ladies and gentlemen, to combat a world that represses the weak, to support the strong, we need what President Roosevelt called a greater conception. the moral order. I would invite all those concerned with the Roosevelt message to give serious consideration this year for a call for justice in the United Nations formulation of the Millennium Development. For it is the correlation between justice and human dignity and sustainability that is important. We can only be resilient inasmuch as we recognize promoting equities, both economic and social on the one side, and ethical on the other. There are a lot of people making money out there. The criminal economy of drugs, weapons, money laundering is more significant than the official economy of many countries. And it is for this reason that we are suffering the way we do. I would like to think of another great South Asian, to think this time of Rabindranath Tagore, and I paraphrase when he says, "We shall thank God that we were made to wait in silence through the night of despair, had to bear the insult of the proud and the strong man's burden, yet all through it, though our hearts quaked with doubt and fear, never could we blindly believe in the salvation which machinery offered to man. But we held fast to our trust in God and the truth of the human soul." I cannot but conclude by inviting you all to remember that what we are doing here today is furthering the cause of humanity espoused by so many great men and women, long past, but revered and remembered in our hearts. In the words of Isaac Newton, "If I have seen further, it is by standing on the shoulders of giants." Peace be upon you.
Prins Al-Hassan van Jordanië, erg kritisch, u kon het horen, maar ook behartigenswaardig. Hij was ernstig in wat hij zei, natuurlijk, want er gebeuren ernstige dingen op dit moment. Maar er zat ook een beetje humor in. En dat allemaal bijna zonder op zijn papiertje te kijken, alsof hij toch echt wel meende wat hij zei, alsof het uit zijn hart kwam.